The following video is not made for kids. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello to my subscribers, this is the TFN Geek, and today we got a special review because we are going to be taking a look at a Transformers action figure that came out a long time ago. In fact, next year will mark 15 years since it was released, and it is the Transformers Reveal the Shield Scout Class or Basic Class sized action figure of Chopsaw. So, I'll try to be as brief as possible as I can, but basically back in 2011, when the original Generations line was at its peak, Hasbro decided to release a sister toy line, if you will, I just lost the word, not contemporary, a secondary line, basically. I forgot the word I was looking for. Anyways, I think the word I was looking for was accompanying or conjoined, but anyways, there was a secondary line for the Generations line known as Transformers Reveal the Shield, and they were a handful of Transformers characters where, just like in the Generation 1 line of Transformers, the only faction symbol found on the actual figures here are rub signs that you have to rub to see if they're Autobots or Decepticons. But it was pretty easy to know if you had an Autobot or a Decepticon in this line because Hasbro decided to blatantly put the faction symbol on the back, so the whole gimmick with the Reveal the Shield line ended up being redundant. And it didn't last that long. The Reveal the Shield line was only on the shelves for, I want to say, about 2.5 months from mid-January to late March of 2011 before it was pushed aside along with the original Generations line to make room for the Transformers Dark of the Moon, a line of action figures. And what makes Chopsaw unique, as you saw, he is a Decepticon, and some of the action figures in the Reveal the Shield line, it was already a very tiny line of Transformers action figures. There were only a total of, I believe, 22 individual Transformers figures released in the Reveal the Shield line, and of those 22, only 5 of them ended up being Decepticons. So Chopsaw is one of only 5 Decepticons released in the Reveal the Shield line, so that's what makes him special and unique compared to other Transformers action figures. The others were the tiny little Legends class sized figures of Megatron and Starscream, and infamously the Reveal the Shield Legends class Megatron figure. On a side note, it still holds the title of being the most recent Megatron action figure to have a handgun for an alt mode, and it's one of only 3 Megatron figures, not counting repaints and releases and reissues, that transformed into some type of handheld weapon. The others being G1 and Classics Megatron, but I'm starting to get off topic. So yeah, Chops and the other Decepticons on the VSU line, apart from Megatron and Starscream, were Voyager class Lugnut, who, like Megatron on being the most recent gun alt mode Megatron figure, the Reveal the Shield Lugnut action figure remains the most recent released Lugnut action figure out there, so I'm really keeping my fingers crossed that we get a new Lugnut action figure from Hasbro. Hasbro, preferably in Commander class size, especially since we've gotten other characters from Transformers Animated in the Legacy line. And then the other Decepticon was Cyclonus, who infamously was only available in a 2-pack with the Reveal the Shield Hot Rod odd figure. So Chopsaw, he himself is not a new mold, unlike Lugnut and Megatron and Starscream were. Similar to Cyclonus, he is a repaint and a retool of a previously released Decepticon, and in the case of Chopsaw, he is a repaint and a retool of this little guy right here. This is the Transformers Hunt for the Decepticon on Scout class or Basic class sized Brimstone figure. And in case you were wondering, back in 2010 and 2011 when these guys were released, Brimstone was released in the Hunt for the Decepticons line in 2010, a year before Chopsaw was released. Legends class and used to be the Legends class size Transformers used to only be 3 inches tall, and in between Legends class and Deluxe class there used to be a size class of Transformers that were known as Scout class or Basic class sized Transformers figures. They had a couple of other title names, but they were basically 3 3/4 inch tall Transformers action figures. They were basically the same size as most action figures action figures are not Marvel Legends, but other like Star Wars action figures. And over time, Scout class and Legends class ended up being absorbed into one, and that's why for the Legacy line we had Core class Transformers that were about 3 inches tall. Also, these guys are part of a now defunct size class that was in between Legends and Deluxe class that doesn't exist anymore. So it shows you how Hasbro has not only downsized Transformers, the overall size of Transformers action figures, but they've eliminated some of the size classes just to make, just to reduce the amount of sizes of Transformers action figure that are out there. So, yeah, Brimstone was released in 2010. The Hunt for the Decepticons line was the predecessor to Reveal the Shield, and after Reveal the Shield and the original Generations line ended, there was basically no predecessor to the Hunt for the Decepticons line. It was basically a continuation to Revenge of the Fallen, so even though I just said it didn't have a predecessor, I guess you could say Reveal the Shield and Hunt for the Decepticons, the predecessor for them was Transformers Dark of the Moon, and that's what Brimstone and Chopsaw fall into. They fall into the category of being a live-action movie or Bayverse, or now as the term has come to replace Bayverse, Averse amongst fans and collectors. Studio series Transformers characters is technically the category that Brimstone and Chopsaw fall into. But the way they were designed, and even though, especially in the arms, the way the arms are designed on this mold, it screams Bayverse Bayverse Decepticon for the two of them, but they are some of the few Bayverse Transformers action figures that I personally think they could fall into the category of being G1 style Transformers. I did want to get Chopsaw back in 2011 when he was released for the first time, but the Scout class sized Reveal the Shield Transformers figures, only 2 of them I believe ended up being released. With 3 of them, I should say, ended up being released with Chopsaw being the only Decepticon of the bunch. And the Scout class sized Reveal the Shield Transformers back in 2011, they infamously became very hard to find. And so, I did pay more than retail price for what Chopsaw originally went for when I got him on Amazon just a couple of months ago last year when it was still 2024. But yeah, I've been wanting Chopsaw to stand beside Brimstone own ever since he came out, so the 14-year wait for me was worth it to finally add him to my collection. Inside the package, he is packaged somewhat mistransformed, but that's just the arms are folded out to the side just to have him sit in the same sized box that Scout class sized Transformers figures came in back at the time. And this was the standard sized packaging for Transformers released in the Reveal the Shield and the Hunt for the Decepticons and the Transformers Generations lines. The main differences were on the box, instead of Reveal the Shield, it had the word Generations on it, and for Generation style Transformers, instead of the box being yellow or gold, if you will, it was red. And for the Hunt for the Decepticons line, there was no subtitle under the word Transformers, it just said Transformers, and then there was a sticker on the front of the boxes that said Hunt for the Decepticons. But yeah, here's Chopsaw inside his box, and there's some things here on the packaging that are long gone from modern Transformers boxes, especially in the Legacy line. Here under the Reveal the Shield logo, you have a transformation level showing you how difficult the transformation for Transformers figures are. And for the Reveal Shield line, the Scout class sized Transformers figures on a scale from going from 0 to 5, 0 being no transformation, which I don't think there were any Transformers action figures at the time that had 0 on the transformation scale, to 5 being difficult. I think the ranks were 1 was 0 was nothing, which technically didn't exist. 1, I believe, was simple. 2 was easy. 3 was I can't remember what 3 stood for, but 4 stood for hard, and then 5 stood for difficult. So I can't remember if 3 stood for was called moderate or what, but yeah, you get the idea. So there's a transformation scale on there that's not seen on Transformers figures anymore. And then I showed the box for a glimpse moment, but bringing it around here to the back, here are some other things that are no longer found on the back of Transformers boxes. In addition to the Reveal the Shield logo on Chopsaw, which you can actually see it while he's still inside the box. The Reveal the Shield logo is right there on one of his, my camera doesn't get the glare from my bedroom lamp. The affection symbol's right there in front of my finger, and it's a traditional styled rub sign, iron faction symbol, where it's got a where it's inside a silvery gray square shaped frame. And I think the reason they did that for Chopsaw and the other Scout class sized figures was due to their small size. Most of the figures in the Reveal the Shield line, they didn't have a silver square shaped frame. It was just this a shield. It was just this all black shield shaped rub sign. And that was found in all of the Deluxe and Voyager class Reveal the Shield figures. But then some other things that aren't found on the back of Transformers boxes anymore are you got a full paragraph bio explaining who Chopsaw is, along with text specs showing all of his strengths and weaknesses. So reading it off to you, the paragraph long bio for Chopsaw reads, most Decepticons are motivated by power or greed or ambition, but Chopsaw just likes to cut stuff in half with his saw. Oz, that's really all the reason he needs to follow Megatron. He'll follow any leader who indulges his maniacal tendency toward destruction. Everywhere Chopsaw goes, he leaves behind a smoking trail of bisected rubble. So yeah, that's it. Pretty gruesome bio that Chopsaw has for him. And I kind of wish that even though there's technically there is room on the back of the boxes for paragraph bios to be printed out, but I wish they would bring bios back for Transformers characters, because that was always fun to read and expand in your own mind the personality of the Transformers characters instead of having to completely come up with it yourself, and then months or years later you read on the Transformers Wikipedia Hasbro going, oh, this is how we wanted this character to be portrayed, and this is some background information we came up for it, and it's completely opposite of what you're saying, oh, okay, I guess Hasbro went in that direction. So yeah, even it didn't take it, and so even though it sounds like I'm saying it took away the imagination of Transformers fans and collectors, no, not by any means. The bios really helped to flesh out and were a great starting point for Transformers fans and collectors to see a hint at how Hasbro, and to a point Takara Tomy also wanted to have the Transformers characters be portrayed. Another thing here on the back of the box that you don't see anymore are text specs showing the strengths and weaknesses of Transformers characters, and at the time for the Generations and Reveal the Shield and Hunt for the Decepticons lines, the text specs. There were 8 of them. There was strength, meaning physical strength, intelligence, speed, endurance, rank, courage, fire blast, and skill. Intelligence being your brains, speed being how fast you are, endurance meaning stamina, how much of a beating you can take before you finally are knocked out. Rank is how high of a rank you are in the Transformers militaries, whether you're on the side of the Autobots or Decepticons. Courage, how brave you are. Fire blast, meaning how much firepower, how many weapons you have. And skill basically means overall combat skill that you have and fighting techniques. So some of them might sound similar, but they're all, when you break it down, they're all unique special tech specs. So for Chopsaw, he has a strength of an 8, an intelligence of 3, a speed of 8, an endurance of 7, a rank of 3, a courage of 9, a fire blast of 6, and a skill of 8. And the tech spec rankings were on a rank from 1 to 10. And so with intelligence of 3 and rank of 3, Chopsaw is not that smart. He's somewhat stupid, and he is a very low-ranking Decepticon. With a fire blast of 6 and an endurance of 7, he has just an above-average amount of firepower and an above-average amount of stamina. And with strength, speed, and skill 8, Chopsaw is very strong, very fast, and very skillful in fighting. And with a courage of 9, Chopsaw is extremely brave. He hardly has any fear, and so with low intelligence and high courage, unfortunately for most Decepticons, that makes you somewhat of a bully and a brute. So perfect bio and tech spec background for Chopsaw, and then just some other things on his box that you'll find on Transformers boxes that were being released at the time in 2011. You've got an advertisement for what was at the time the official Transformers website, Transformers.com, and then here on the bottom of the box, there's a new sticker here that was placed by someone who had owned this copy of Chopsaw at some point. Again, this figure came out back in 2011, and it's now 2025. I got it last year in 2024, so this thing was floating around out there in the world for 13 years unopened inside the box. But another thing that you won't find anymore is right here on the bottom of the box is an advertisement for the Transformers Collectors Club. At the time, Hasbro wanted as many Transformers fans and collectors to join the official Transformers Collectors Club as quickly as they could. The Transformers Collectors Club, unfortunately, doesn't exist anymore, or it was spearheaded by Fun Publications, which own the distribution rights and own the registered trademark on what were at the time the quote-unquote official Hasbro Transformers comic books, which also released, in addition to spearheading the comic books, Fun Publications allowed the Transformers Collectors Club. It was basically a way of getting unique designed Transformers action figures, most of which were repaints and retools, figures that had previously been released at mass retail, the same way Hasbro was doing exclusive Transformers figures at the time through BotCon, which was the official Transformers convention. But when Hasbro's license with Fun Publications fell through in 2016, both BotCon, the convention as it had existed for, was it 23 or 24 years? The BotCon had been established in 1993, but it had lasted for nearly for over 20 years. A lot of Transformers fans and collectors were hoping that it was one of those staples of the Transformers franchise that would last forever, along with the Transformers Collectors Club. But when both of them, it was announced that they would cease when Hasbro lost the license agreement they had with Fun Publications. That was basically a jaw-dropping moment for the Transformers fan base, and not just in the United States but across the globe. So that's why a lot of exclusive Transformers figures they've been released in exclusive lines such as Generation Selects, or they've been released exclusively on Hasbro's own website, Hasbro Pulse, or they've been released at Hasbro's own exclusive convention, HasCon, which I believe became a successor to BotCon, was the HasCon convention. And instead of just Transformers, it focused on all of Hasbro's products. BotCon has come back, kind of, sort of, but it's a convention that's mostly run by adult age Transformers collectors, and it's not really affiliated directly with Hasbro, and it doesn't have a comic book publisher to give it backup funding. So BotCon is not quite the convention the BotCon convention that exists today. It's not quite the one that existed during the 90s, 2000s, and into the first half of the 2010s. And so yeah, this is a window into the past of what a typical Transformers action figure looked like back in 2011, even during the first years of the decade of the 2010s. And at the time, the economy of the United States wasn't doing that great. It wasn't doing that great in Japan either, and that's why a lot of the Transformers action figures, not so much the ones in 2011, but the ones that came out the following years in 2012 and 2013, they weren't that great, and looked like they were low quality and low budget made Transformers action figures. So, but yeah, it is a nice blast from the past having Chopsaw here in hand. So I babbled on a lot longer because apart from the paragraph bio on the back of his box card and the tech specs and everything, that's pretty much all there is to say about Chopsaw. One thing the old packages don't have that the new ones do is the number of steps it takes to transform the character. At the time, you were supposed to figure out the number of steps that the transformation took by opening up the instruction sheet and following the steps to transform the figures from robot mode to alt mode, which started with the Transformers Revenge of the Fallen line in 2009, and up until that year, Transformers action figures have been mostly packaged, transformed inside their alternate modes. But starting with Revenge of the Fallen line in 2009, Hasbro and Takara Tomy realized that when Transformers action figures are packaged, transformed inside their robot modes, then you not only reduce the size of the packaging that the figures come in, but you can get more copies of Transformers action figures out on the shelves. And so ever since then, Transformers action figures have universally been packaged, transformed into robot mode. But if you were to go time travel back in time to before the Revenge of the Fallen line in 2009, Transformers action figures are almost exclusively transformed inside their alt modes, so I apologize for making this video a lot longer than I wanted it to, but without further delay, let's give Chopsaw what he's been waiting for since 2011 for the last, now that it's 2025, 14 years, and let's finally get him out of the package and take a close look at him in his robot mode. Alright, and so here is Chopsaw out of his box, transformed into his robot mode. And yeah, he is a pretty freaky looking Decepticon. And as you saw in the back of the box, his vehicle mode is a motorcycle. It's a chopper type motorcycle. I believe it's modeled after a Harley Davidson, but I could be incorrect. But yeah, with his body proportions looking somewhat hunchbacked and everything, yeah, he is a freaky looking little Decepticon. And his hands consist of these three little fingers here at the end of his arms, and then as his bio said, that he has saws on here. So the way this mold transforms the front wheels of the motorcycle, the front wheel of the motorcycle, I should say, splits in half and becomes these like three-pronged blades. If you can imagine, almost like a fidget spinner of inner of death. Then that's what this mold has on its arms. So yeah, Chopsaw lives up to his name by using his chop saws to chop apart anyone who stands in his path. And yeah, pretty freaky looking design. His head sculpt looks like he's wearing a biker's helmet. And then his face is just, my camera's blurring it out, unfortunately, but his face is a pair of eyeballs along with a mouth plate that looks somewhat like a medieval knight's helmet, but if you look at it closely, it looks like the teeth of an upper jaw bone, and he has no lower jaw. So yeah, I think they were trying to go for a monstrous like a mad skeleton biker design with the robot mode for this mold. For Chopsaw, visually, most of his gray parts, they're like this beige gray, not true gray. My camera's making it look almost like ivory brown, and like the color of cavity decaying teeth. It works for the mold since it's used for a Decepticon. But yeah, just really enjoy the color scheme on here. Apart from that, which is the predominant color scheme, as far as having paint, Chopsaw is primarily magenta shade of purple along with yellow stripes, and all the yellow parts on Chopsaw are yellow paint. Ain't none of it's yellow plastic. But yeah, I'm really thrilled with how he looks. Here's the rub sign here on the top of his shoulder. This ends up being the top of the fuel tank for his motorcycle mode, and luckily it's my fingers are hot enough that I can get the rub sign to hopefully work. So yeah, he is a Decepticon. So yeah, that's the only faction symbol that that he has. For articulation, the head's on a ball joint, so it has a potential to spin clockwise 360 degrees left and right, but due to the shape of due to the angle of the ball joint and the way Chopsaw's head is faced, if you try to spin it around, you'll pop the head off and you could actually end up breaking off the ball joint. So pretty much all Chopsaw can do is look up and down. Now, and he can't really look side to side. For articulation, the arms are attached to the shoulder on a ball joint. Fresh out of the box, it's a little stiff. If so, the arms have the potential to spin 360 degrees, and the arms can go inward and outward, so you can make it look almost like he's doing an ab crunch at the shoulders. Because the arms are supposed to, when you transform this mold into robot mode, the arms are supposed to rotate around like there, but this part has nothing to lock into place, so it's just relying on friction to hold it in. There's no swivel joint at the bicep. You do have a hinge joint at the elbow, and the hands can go up and down like this due to how it transforms arms from the front wheel housing of the motorcycle. There is a waist swivel, but unfortunately, to activate the waist swivel, the seat from the motorcycle mode, it's attached to the back side of the robot mode, so you do have to flip it down to activate the waist swivel, unfortunately. And the seat is supposed to flip up right here and sit as a part of the backpack for the robot mode, so it basically renders the waist joint, the swivel joint and the waist joint virtually worthless. The legs can go forward this far, or at the hip they can go back this far if you can get it around the chair, or the seat cover, if you will. No thigh swivels, hinge jointed knees due to transformation, and that is pretty much it. The knee joint and the thigh joints are the only joints in the legs. Eggs, and there's no ankle rockers on the feet, so you can they are angled out slightly, so you are supposed to put this mold into a sprawl-legged pose to get the feet sitting flat on a flat surface. So for what it does, being a Bayverse or Studio Series type motorcycle Decepticon, the mold does a pretty good job, and it's one of my all-time personal favorites. For a size comparison, here's Chopsaw next to the only other version of the mold that this was used, which is the original first version was Brimstone, who was released in the Hunt for the Decepticons line a year before Chopsaw. I've transformed Brimstone quite a lot over the years that I've owned him, so all of his joints are pretty loose. Just like as you can see here, the head joints is really loose. One part that's tight right now since it's fresh out of the box on Chopsaw, this part, which is the rear license plate of the motorcycle mode, you're supposed to flip it like this and have it act almost like a necklace or the robot mode. Here on Brimstone, it's as you can see right there, it's really loose at all the times I've transformed it. So I'm personally not keeping my fingers crossed that Chopsaw's joints will last that long. But yeah, still pretty nice here. There are some paint apps that one version of this mold has that the other one is lacking in. Most notably is that unlike Chopsaw, whose motorcycle wheels are unpainted black plastic, on Brimstone his hubcaps are painted silver, and it's the same for both the front and back wheels. The back wheel ends up becoming the middle of the torso for the robot mode, so you can see it there on Chopsaw since it's unpainted black, but yeah, it is painted silver on Brimstone. That's one gripe I have. That's the only gripe I personally have with Chopsaw, is that I wish Hasbro and Takara Tomy would have done like they did with Brimstone and painted the hubcaps of the wheels silver instead of leaving them unpainted black plastic. Other parts, the paint that Chopsaw has that Brimstone does not, is that the upper thighs are painted maroon, the maroon and yellow stripes that Chopsaw has throughout him, and Brimstone's legs are unpainted, painted gray plastic. And here you can see an example of the more silvery gray plastic used on Brimstone versus the beige plastic used here on Chopsaw when you put them side by side with each other. So that's really nice thing to see there. And the ankle sculpting detailing on the ankles at the sides of the feet are sculpted differently. They aren't symmetrical. Oh, and even the thighs are shaped differently at the tops of the legs, where the ball joints are connected. So there's not much. Not as much symmetry as the figures would believe you to be. There are at first glance. And one fun thing you can do, if you want, is that you can, because Chopsaw is a straight up repaint of Brimstone, This is how the arms transform into the front of the motorcycle when you get them transformed into their alt mode. So if you wanted to, you can link Chopsaw and Brimstone on at the hands like this. Yes, and now they can do a Decepticon impersonation of Rack and Ruin. That's a really nice thing to see there. Here, as I try and get the arm apart without breaking it. So that's pretty much all there is to say about robot mode. As far as which version is the better version, I enjoy, even though I've owned Brimstone all the years since he was released, and I've only had Chopsaw out of the box for minutes now. Now, I enjoy them both equally, and yeah, I've always wanted to see what Chopsaw and Brimstone look like. Look like almost like a pair of Decepticon on mad bikers trying to tear up the roads. So yeah, there they are, standing side by side with each other one more time. So let's get... so this... I started my channel years after Brimstone I got in my collection, so technically this is a review of both Chopsaw and Brimstone at the same time. There are a handful of reviews on YouTube of people who managed to get both Brimstone and Chopsaw after Chopsaw was released back in 2011, and they reviewed both figures at the same time. This mold hasn't been used any other time apart from these two. Again, it was intended to be a Bayverse design. And most of the Bayverse designed figures from the original movie lines, they haven't been re-released or repainted in more recent years due to the Studio Series line. Whether or not toy only, what I personally like to call toy only characters from the live action movies, if they'd ever get modern figures such as Chopsaw and Brimstone here, I highly doubt that we ever would. But yeah, that's just one last thing I wanted to say. So let's hurry up and get these guys transformed into their alt modes of motorcycles, and we will wrap up the review. Alright, and so here is Chopsaw transformed into his alt mode of a motorcycle. It's a nice little Harley Davidson type motorcycle. Oh, the wheels do roll fairly well. Oh, there's no kibble or any parts colliding with it, so it does roll using his own box as an example to show off. As you can see right there, the wheels do spin freely, very successfully. The front and back ones do. So yeah, it's a pretty neat little looking motorcycle. The rub sign there's the rub sign one more time, showing that he is a Decepticon. So yeah, there it is. There it is right there, showing his Decepticon on Allegiance. Now that I've transformed him into his alt mode, unfortunately, one thing about this copy of Chopsaw is that the yellow stripe there on the fuel tank, it doesn't match up properly, but that's been an occurrence that's repeated with more modern Transformers action figures. But yeah, he does have some nice paint apps. He's got this maroon purple with the yellow stripe motif going around with his paint job. See it on the front wheel housing, the fuel tank, and then the side pieces right here where all his yellow paint apps are located. The headlight is painted gold. Oh, so it's nice and metallic. One thing to note about this copy of Chopsaw that I got off of Amazon is that there is a scratch mark right here on the front wheel housing. I don't know how well my camera's going to pick it up right there, but yeah, he does have some scuffing right there where it looks like a piece of the plastic might have flaked off at the factory, but again, due to his bio and how reckless and dangerous he is, I just chopped that up to him having a battle scar. There is a kickstand. And on the base of the motorcycle, but it's not that large, and so you have the figure resting on a flat surface. It can kind of sort of work, but unfortunately, with very little effort, the motorcycle can tip over to the side. So the landing gear is unfortunately a little rendered somewhat useless. But there's two positions you can do here on the back of the motorcycle with the license plate. You can either have it folded up or you can fold it down like that, and you can make the motorcycle about 1/8 of an inch longer. longer. Fresh out of the package, it's still hinging up and down fairly well, and the robot mode head ends up here on the back, so there is visible head syndrome for this mold. One thing I've done on my copy of Brimstone is I've tipped the head up like this to hold the license plate in the back, because bringing in Brimstone for a size comparison, here is Chopsaw next to his mold mate Brimstone. So you've got a blue bike versus a maroon purple bike, like when comparing the two to each other. And again, I just really like the painted wheels on Brimstone, so that's my only major gripe with Chopsaw is painted hubcaps versus unpainted hubcaps. I think Brimstone manages to pull it off really well. At the time in 2011, that was when parts of Transformers action figures that were designed not to ever separate from each other were being held in place by metal pins instead of screws, as they had been traditionally held together in the past. So, as far as if you're OCD like I am and you prefer painted wheels over unpainted wheels on your Transformers action figures, in my personal opinion, I think it would actually be a lot less of a hassle trying to just paint Chopsaw's hubcaps silver instead of trying to find a duplicate copy of Brimstone and part swapping the wheels out with each other. Because as you saw in, I don't know if you saw in Robot Mode, but the front wheel housing for when they transform into the Robot Mode hands, they're held in place by two very large pins. And so yeah, basically the wheels of this mold, they aren't designed to be removable. But one of the reasons why I mistransformed the robot mode head is because here on my copy of Brimstone, as you can see from years of transforming this thing back and forth, this part art is just a floppy mess now, and it is held in place by metal pins. It's not pegged on, so there's no way of tightening it up or without breaking the part art and having to just buy a replacement figure regardless. Yeah, it looks like the headlights on both Chopsaw and Brimstone are painted the same shade of gold. One thing Brimstone has that Chopsaw does not is that the tail light. I was going to say the tail light's not painted on Chopsaw like it is on Brimstone. Technically it is. It's just a very darker shade of red that's almost identical to the maroon found on Chopsaw. So it is painted red, but it's almost the same shade. But it's a shade of red that's almost the same as the shade of maroon purple used here, or magenta purple used on Chopsaw. So it looks like it's not painted at a distance. But yeah, as you can see right there, I have to tilt Brimstone's head really high up just to keep this part from flopping around. So yes, unlike Chopsaw, who's got a yellow racing stripe motif with his paint job, Brimstone has gold flames over all of his blue parts. So, alright, and his Decepticon logo, which I didn't show off in his robot mode, it ends up here on the robot mode shoulder. It's silver, like most of the movieverse faction symbols, instead of traditionally being purple, like most Decepticon logos are especially on Generation 1 Transformers. So yeah, Chopsaw and Brimstone, they're a pretty nice looking pair of Harley-Davidson motorcycles. And again, as far as which version is the better version of this mold, I think they're both pretty great in their own right. And I just really enjoy having both of them in my Transformers collection. So this has been my review of Transformers Reveal the Shield Chopsaw, and to a point it's also been a review of his mold mate Hunt for the Decepticons Brimstone. I highly recommend you get both these figures if you can find them at decent prices on the internet. They are some of my all-time... This mold is one of my all-time favorite motorcycle Transformer molds that's ever been released. So thank you guys all so much, and until next time, this has been the TFN Geek. I apologize for the review going on longer than I wanted it to be. But until next time, you guys, please stay safe, stay healthy, transform and roll out. Goodbye, everyone.